We are going to provide a more focused exploration of two types of analysis that are especially important in the project management sector: stakeholder and problem analysis. Let's begin with stakeholder analysis. It's usually clear during the project identification and design phase that there will be numerous stakeholders. As a result, one of the first steps is to identify the stakeholders. PMD Pro recognizes 6 categories of stakeholders. Users are the people who directly benefit from the products and/or services of the project. Governance stakeholders are people who have an interest in how things are managed in the project. This category might include project boards, steering groups, sponsors, auditors, compliance staff, regulators, and funders. Providers actively participate in the work of the project. These include managers, team members, implementing organizations, contractors, and suppliers. Influencers are people who have the ability to change the direction, and it could be a positive or a negative change, of your project. Examples are local media, government officials, business interests, or community leaders. Dependents are those who want something from the project other than the final product or services. And typically dependents are other projects or functional units of your organization that need one of the project deliverables. For example, in a watershed development project, a low-income housing project working in the same community might be waiting for the completion of the watershed zoning plan in order to begin its construction activities. Sustainers are groups responsible for supporting the product after the project is done. Once again, using a watershed management project as an example, the Ministry of Public Works and the Ministry of Agriculture might be expected to assume medium and long-term ownership activities following project completion. Be sure to recognize that some of these categories overlap. An individual or a group may fall into one or more of the categories. For example, communities could be both users and sustainers. These categories could also be broken down further into subcategories if necessary. Note also that project stakeholders change over time. New stakeholders can enter the intervention area, while others lose their influence or interest. Stakeholder identification is therefore an ongoing process that should be revisited at intervals throughout the life of the project. Stakeholders should be involved early and often. This is critical because participation increases control over the development processes and ownership of the products and services by the stakeholders. With participation by stakeholders, you will be more likely to achieve project goals, be on time, and on budget. At this point, we are going to learn about a project management tool that's used for analyzing stakeholder relationships. It's called the Venn Diagram. V-E-N-N. The Venn diagram analyzes and illustrates key relationships between stakeholder groups. A Venn diagram is developed through the perspective of a single project stakeholder or one group of stakeholders. Each circle in the diagram identifies a stakeholder involved in the project. The size of the circle can help indicate the relative power or influence of each stakeholder, while the spatial separation is used to indicate the relative strength or weakness of the working relationship or interactions between the different groups and organizations. They're commonly used as a participatory planning tool with target groups to help them to profile relationships. This Venn diagram was developed for the Delta River Project case study. It was developed from the perspective of fishing families with regard to the relative power of stakeholders and the degree of relationship between groups. The community borders a river. The Venn diagram can be read like this. Industry X is very influential but remote. The Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, is remote and closely aligned to the interest of industry. Fishing cooperatives represent fishermen's interest and have close relationship with retailers. The small size of the circle representing the fisheries department indicates it has little influence. Now it's time for a participatory exercise involving either individual participants or small groups. Each of you will create a Venn diagram for a project of your choice. You may choose any project that has a group of stakeholders for analysis. Choose one stakeholder or group of stakeholders and draw the Venn diagram from their perspective. Remember, each circle represents a stakeholder. The size of the circle indicates the relative power or influence of each stakeholder, and the spatial separation indicates the relative strength or weakness of the working relationship, interaction between different groups and organizations. This is a learning exercise, so don't try to come up with something that's too sophisticated or perfect. Now I'd like to show you another tool that can be used for analyzing stakeholder information. The Stakeholder Analysis matrix uses the outcomes from the Venn diagram, or another stakeholder influence mapping tool, and it further identifies, elaborates, and communicates the interest, the capacities, and the potential actions of project stakeholders. Note that the Stakeholder Analysis matrix is quite different from the Venn diagram that we were just looking at. Unlike the Venn diagram, this matrix provides additional information about stakeholder interest, their influence, and potential actions. Looking at the red type in the example on the slide, you'll see additional information on the fishing families and the textile industry. Upon reading this matrix, we discover that there are 20,000 fishing families who want to improve their means of livelihood with keen interest in pollution control measures who might be available to lobby for action. We also learn that the textile industry is a medium-scale, poorly regulated, non-unionized group interested in profits, able to employ anti-pollution technologies, and might be able to raise awareness of environmental impact.